Hey YouTube, this is Drew Tech here to show you how to get the most out of Wine on Linux. So now just as some background, Wine is a Windows compatibility layer for Linux. That's designed to allow Windows applications to run on Linux. Like, I want to be clear, this is not the same as an emulator. Let me say that again. Wine is not an emulator, which actually Wine used to stand for Wine is not an emulator. But anyway, Wine can be cumbersome, especially for a new user, because it doesn't come with a GUI by default. Thankfully, there is a graphical front end called PlayOnLinux, and I'll do most of the work with Wine for you. So all I have to do is select installer from PlayOnLinux, follow the instructions, and then you're all set. I also want to mention an easier utility called Lutris, which basically people have written install scripts, which automate the process even more than PlayOnLinux. So it works kind of like the package manager, whereas PlayOnLinux you have to manually go out and download the exe file. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using PlayOnLinux because I know it works to install the application I'm going to be installing to demonstrate this process, which is iTunes. During testing, I have had some problems installing iTunes with Lutris, but doing it with PlayOnLinux worked fine. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so now to install PlayOnLinux, we're going to open up terminal and type sudo apt install PlayOnLinux. I'll have that command in the description. And then you're going to punch in your password. Alright, and then the reason why I installed PlayOnLinux through the command line is because even though it shows up in Ubuntu software, if you try to install it through there, it just doesn't work for whatever reason. But anyway, we have it installed, we can just launch it, and then this is the interface. Well, it'll probably look different for you because I have my Mac dark theme installed. But anyway, let's go up to this install, and then I'll go and get a list of applications that are in the database. Alright, and then once it's done, you have this search bar, which you can use to search for stuff. And if you look down here, you also have the option to install a non-listed program, though just be aware that that's less likely to work. But anyway, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to go search for iTunes. And there it is, iTunes 12, which is the version that I want. Let's go and install it. Okay, and then we'll give you some reminders. Anyway, you can hit next. And then this is just a disclaimer saying that it's not related to WineHQ. Just like the usual disclaimers. And then it finally brings you to the actual installation process. And then for iTunes, syncing with iDevices does not work. So if you're trying to install iTunes through this process to sync with your iPhone, then don't. It says you need the 32-bit installer. You can get it from here, which that's a lie. That link does not work. I don't know why it gives you that link. You can get it from like itunes.apple.com or apple.com/iTunes, whichever you prefer, and then just select the 32-bit installer. Alright, then you hit next, and then it'll install whatever Wine version is needed. Alright, and then it'll go and create the virtual drive for your program installation. The interesting thing about this is that it has separate virtual drives for each program, so that way if one program is malicious, it's less likely to be able to affect other Windows programs that you have installed or even your host system, though you still want to be careful with what you're running, because applications do still have access to your home folder, though it can't take down the system. But anyway, in this case, it wants the 32-bit iTunes installer. And if you want to change what Windows version it's acting as, simply go up to Configure, go to the virtual drive for your program, in this case iTunes 12, and then go to Wine, and then click Configure Wine. And there you go, and it'll open up this menu, and then you can select the Windows version that you want. Now I'd suggest just leave it on whatever version it suggests, or if that version's lower than the version listed on the system requirements page, then put it up to that version. However, for the purposes of this video, I'm going with Windows 10, just because I know it works best. But anyway, then once you're done, you just hit apply and OK, and then go back to the installer, then select your file right here, then hit next, and then it finally brings you to the actual installer, and the installation process from here is pretty much the same as it would be on a regular Windows PC, well, aside from the different look and feel. And now, unfortunately with this, you can't always go with the latest and greatest, because of the way Wine works. Of course, you can try the latest and greatest first, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going with 12.7.5.9 just because I know it works. Like, the latest version of iTunes has this bug with Wine where it has a black, unusable interface, if you know what I mean. But anyway, we're just going to go through this installation process. Let's uncheck add the shortcut to my desktop because I don't want to use iTunes as the default player for audio files. Update iTunes and other Apple software, especially if you're using an older version, you want that unchecked. But anyway, let's go and install it. And don't ask it to turn on anything for you. And then we'll go through the actual installation process. Alright, and as the installer said, if the program asks to open after installation is complete, you just want to say no. And then we're going to click finish, and then it'll go in simulator reboot, and then there you go, there's your application. Now the nice thing is it actually does list itself in the menu, so that way you don't have to go into PlayOnLinux every time. But anyway, we're going to open this up, let's agree to the EULA. Okay, and then if it asks you to update, especially if you're using an older version, just don't update. And if it gives the option, just say to not ask you again. And let's just say no thanks for this. And there you go, then you have the program running just as it would on a normal PC. Well, some stuff may not work, so you may want to play around with it, see how it works, but the thing is, like, Windows programs that you run through Wine, like, they don't even know that it's not Windows. Like, some Windows is there, but not all Windows is there. Just the bare minimum to run an application. I even heard that even Microsoft's own utilities don't even know that Windows is not there. But yeah, you will have the old Windows 98 menus, but it's really just an aesthetic thing. But anyway, I also want to mention Lutris in this video. You can find it by going to lutris.net, and then you can search up installers that people have made from both on the website and in the application. And if the latest version doesn't work, you can also look at this to see like which version you should install, like just to go down the list. Just saves you some time testing versions until one works. And by the way, I'll have instructions to install PlayOnLinux and Lutris down in the description. Spoiler alert, there are more commands to install Lutris than PlayOnLinux, but once they're installed, Lutris is a bit easier, but PlayOnLinux works fine, even if you're a new user. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, found it was helpful, hit the like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. And also, if this doesn't work for you, then don't even try to go through all the effort of fixing it. It'll just be much easier just to use a virtual machine or even dual boot, despite what other sources say.